In our way, and our golden age has just begun.
This is Human Events with Jack Posobiec.
Now it's time for everyone to understand what America First truly means.
Welcome to the Second American Revolution.
All right, Jack Posobiec, we're back here live, Human Events Daily. So, of course, we just had the huge announcement. Everyone in the country is talking about it now. The Turning Point USA All-American Halftime Show. Why would you want to go watch what were they calling it? A celebration of queer history that hates America, that says the guy was up at Bad Bunny was up on the Grammys last night saying he hates ICE, that ICE is so bad. See, that's strange, because to me, you know, when I think of ICE, I think of someone and a group of people that are getting the pedos out of the country because they're actually deporting pedos. So, you know, if you're anti-ICE, doesn't that make you kind of pro-pedo? Are you a pedo protector? America needs to know. So don't watch that. Go and watch instead the All-American Halftime Show. But since we are speaking of depraved sex acts and the confluence between that and politics, we have to get into the Epstein Files, because Epstein Files Phase 2 is finally here. We've spent the weekend digging through these. I know a lot of you guys out in the audience have as well. Send in your best ones. And by the way, of the revelations that you have seen in the Phase 2 release, long awaited, been 1 year since Phase 1. Of course, remember that. Who could forget? And now finally Phase 2 is upon us. So send us the best ones that you found, 1776 at humanevents.com, 1776 at humanevents.com. I wanted to get in Oren McIntyre here, host of the Oren McIntyre Show, as well, to kind of ride side saddle as we check out some of this stuff. Oren, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
And I got to ask you, not to get into, before we get into Epstein, what do you think, man? Kid Rock, Brantley Gilbert, what do you think of the lineup?
I mean, obviously, it's going to blow away the official Super Bowl halftime show. It's been garbage for a long time. It's about time that conservatives stepped up and provided a real celebration of America at the event that is supposed to be one of the most important televised events in the country. So I think it's fantastic that you guys are making this happen.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And it all started with a crazy tweet, and you know, here we are. We're actually announcing it. We're actually doing it, and you know, nothing but thanks and gratitude to the Turning Point team for looking at this and seeing the energy and the response, the massive response that it that it really engaged and engendered. And it's something that I think absolutely America just wants, because we're sick of. And here's what's kind of funny, because like, It feels like America for so long has been run by this like sick, depraved cabal of sorts. And then we get the Jeffrey Epstein emails, and it's kind of like, oh, we were being ruled by a sick, depraved cabal of sorts. And in fact, here they are laughing about it in their emails to each other. I don't want to go into like super in the weeds, but, you know, and of course we'll do that a little bit, but, you know, in a general sense, does this kind of show you or show the country that like the way that we think of our government as just sort of being like, well, we the people go vote for politicians and they go do the work. Is that really how the sausage is made?
Obviously not. And I think that for a while now, the American people have realized that. It's only a few stalwarts, I think, that are really holding on to the Mr. Smith goes to Washington model of American politics. They know that the country has been run by a cesspool. They just didn't know all the names. They didn't know all the details. They didn't know all the connections. And while there's still a lot going on with the files, there's so much to parse. I'm still waiting, you know, as we churn through what's real, what's speculation, what was just someone saying something offhand, and then what can we confirm. There's so much behind all of this, but what it does show is that there is an elite club, that there is an elite class, that they are engaged in, sadly, exactly the kind of behavior that you expected from them. And so when we're looking at politics, when we're trying to understand why we feel like our country is coming apart, or that the people who are ruling us ultimately don't care about us, this is just more evidence to back up the sneaking suspicion that I think more and more people had in the country, that we simply cannot trust our elite ruling class.
And that really is the bottom line on it. And I think it's something where even over the past year, that's why, to an extent, so many Democrats cynically, like AOC, kind of glommed onto this. Now, of course, they did it as an anti-Trump sort of thing, but the dam just sort of broke on the narrative where they realized, okay, guys, we can't uphold this false reality that that Jeffrey Epstein wasn't connected to all of these powerful people. So we just have to go with it, but then also claim that it's tied to Trump. Even when, and I've been through this phase too, the first thing I looked for, same as phase one, was, does it mention Trump? And every single time that it comes up, and then Trump just put up a Truth Social about this, where it's all about talking about, it's all about mentions of them saying, how can we get Trump involved? How can we get dirt on Trump? How can we dirty up Trump or do things to him? Because he wasn't involved in any of this. And so I think it does go to show you, but to your broader point there, that so many Democrats had to just go along with the narrative because they were sick of upholding the lie.
Well, you can understand why the administration was initially careful with what was going on here. As you say, many Democrats are combing through this, just kind of searching through, and whatever mention of Trump's name, they say, oh, look, there's evidence that Trump did something. And then we actually look at the document and there's no way to verify it. Or like you said, it's them trying to figure out how to involve him in these kind of things. It never pans out to actually pointing to Trump being involved in directly one of these Epstein scenarios. And so you get that, like, you have to be careful about how you ultimately roll that out. But I do think it's important the information is out now. And that hesitation by the administration at some level allowed the Democrats to kind of lob the ball back into their court to try to attach this to Trump in some way, saying, oh, what is he hiding? What is he hiding? Well, it turns out nothing, but that doesn't matter, because if they can create the appearance of some kind of cover up, that's what matters. That's what gets people's minds turning. So I think it was wise, just needed to get this out into the public. And yes, in many ways, the left can try to exploit it or mislead people with it. But ultimately, I think the sunshine is absolutely the best disinfectant on this. It's all going to vet out. If Trump is not involved, then the best thing to do is simply get out what is involved there. And I think that this is ultimately going to be something that's good, that the Trump administration is going to get behind them after all of this.
Yeah, and look, the thing that we've always said, just to reiterate it, but every time this comes up and you'll see at the left, oh, you're doing this, oh, you're doing that. Guys, Joe Biden was in power with Merrick Garland in charge of the Department of Justice. If Trump was in the Epstein files, you wouldn't have needed Jack Smith. You wouldn't have needed a Russian dossier. You wouldn't have needed all of Russiagate. Why would they have gone to such incredible lengths, making up crimes that had never been indicted before, that no one had ever been charged with before? Why would they have gone to all of those lengths if they could have just said, oh, here's a picture of Donald Trump in a jacuzzi with a girl. Oh, wait, sorry, that was actually Bill Clinton. Or, here's, of course, that would have been the very first thing they all looked for, because you can even see in the interviews that have come out. And by the way, I would even say, I was talking to a buddy of mine who, prior intelligence service guy that I was in the IC with, and we talked about how even when you look, by the way, at the FBI officers or the FBI agents that are holding these interviews, and when they're talking to people, even they keep asking about Trump. They don't actually go down the line of asking about anyone on the left. They're the ones who are asking about Trump. And this is in the 20-teens, 2020s. So again, you just see this pervasive bias over and over from both Epstein and his friends, and even the FBI at times, of trying to get Trump. It just ain't there.
Yeah, that's such an important point, Jack. And that's why I was always relatively sure that there wasn't going to be anything with Trump involved, because as you said, the Democrats pushed basically every radical attempt to try to keep Trump from returning to the presidency that they could find. They threw his supporters in jail. They threw his staff in jail. They manufactured charges. They created conspiracy theories. They strained the credibility of the FBI, the intelligence agencies. They just did everything up to and including shooting the guy to try to stop him. So it's really hard for me to believe that they just have this slam dunk case of him as being some kind of pedophile, and they just couldn't get around to bringing it out. Now, some people said, oh, well, it's gonna indict some of the Democrats. They're worried about it indicting some of the Democrats. Guys, they were willing to destroy anyone and everyone to beat Trump. You don't think that they were willing to ruin the reputation of Bill Clinton, whose reputation is already ruined, to get Donald Trump? I mean, come on, that's ridiculous. Ultimately, if the case had been there, they would have made it. It obviously wasn't, and that's why ultimately it was always going to be the case that the best thing to do was to get the Epstein files out there and prove that Trump is ultimately exonerated and that there are other very nefarious actors inside our government that we need to be aware of. The relationships, the attitudes towards the average American, especially Christians, was absolutely gross. We see that reiterated throughout different documents in these leaks. And so the picture that falls into place is definitely one that I think really exposes the entire American elite system, but especially those on the left.
And it certainly does. And when you look at Epstein's politics, or political, leanings that come across in these things, it really just kind of feels like this is sort of like your average MSNBC viewer kind of guy, where he doesn't actually have any level of sophistication that's further than that, other than his own access to the elites. But his politics are pretty much just in line with anybody who would watch like Rachel Maddow or any of the Chris Hayes, Joy Reid, any of these other MSNBC shows. And there's certainly, there's other things that he gets into, but that's by and large all of it. Jack Posobiec, on with Oren McIntyre here, Human Events Daily. We'll be right back.